In our fifth episode, Brandon and I explore the second of our 12 manager intelligence skills, integrity. You will learn what this skill is, why the best managers have honed and developed it, and some practical tools you can utilize to develop this skill. Let's dive right in.
Congratulations! You are tuned into Leading Strong, the place to be to level up your leadership effectiveness on one of your most important roles, engaging your employees. Managers are responsible for at least 70% of their employees' engagement. The best managers, like you, lead strong by constantly honing and developing the skills needed to keep their teams engaged. Your hosts, Darren Veresamy and Brandon Miller, are the co-founders of 34 Strong, a company that creates great places to work. Their team has worked in Fortune 500 companies, government agencies, and small businesses to lead strong. Now over to Darren.
Welcome to Season 1 of Leading Strong, where we will dive deep to grow your manager intelligence. I'm your host, Darren Veresamy, here to serve you in your continued discovery and growth to lead strong. This episode of Leading Strong is brought to you by 34 Strong, where organizations just like yours become great places to work. To find out more, check out 34strong.com. Welcome to the Manager Intelligence Podcast. Today is going to be episode 5, where we're going to talk about the manager intelligence skill of integrity. I'm your co-host, Darren Veresamy, and joining me today as well is Brandon Miller, our other show host. He is our CEO at 34 Strong and co-founder, and I am the Chief Operating Officer and co-founder as well. Welcome, Brandon.
Thank you, Darren. It's great to be here.
Yeah, so last week we started by talking about one of our 12 proprietary manager intelligence skills, which was individualize. And for those tuning in for the first time, if you missed that episode, we really encourage you to check it out because these actually kind of build in sequence in going through. The whole concept of manager intelligence is what are the skills that allow the best bosses, the best managers to show up as the best and really create and sustain teams of highly engaged employees. And last week, Brandon, we talked about the individualized skill, and one of the pieces that we ended up addressing in there was the 4 needs of followers: trust, hope, stability, compassion, and integrity. This week, it's a skill, and a lot of times we don't think of integrity as a skill. We'll think of you either have it or you don't. And here we get into how integrity builds trust. That's in times when things are going really well and they're certain, and especially in times that are highly uncertain. Can you give us a little bit of an overview on integrity as a skill? Because I think that's going to be a shift in a lot of people's thinking.
Yeah, when we think about integrity, as most of us recall it or simplified definitions, it's being a person of your word. It's mirroring your private life with your public life. So what people see is what they get. It's following through on commitments. This is often associated with this value that many companies would say is vital to their company's success. I mean, you can almost walk in any significant organization and you're going to find integrity somewhere in or around the place. But when we think about the skill, we're talking about something that can be developed, that you can grow this, you can measure it, as we've discussed with individualize, and we will as we go through the rest of the manager intelligence skills. This is something you can rate where you are now, and you can intentionally build this skill of integrity, and it's vital. I would say up front, disclaimer, this one's uncomfortable, even for me, because personally speaking, this one does confront us. It is in a very good way. I've yet to meet a person that hears integrity like, I got that one 100% locked down. Well, you might have some place to look because trust is not static. Trust is dynamic with people. And when we've built it, doesn't mean that that's where it stays because we put that effort. Trust is something we build upon and we continue to invest into it. It's like a 401k or your IRA. If you stop investing, you'll see some growth, but continue to invest. That's where you really see it maximized over time.
Yeah, I really want to make sure all of our listeners heard that trust is not static. It's not a box for us to check. You'll hear us say this often because we really want to reiterate every one of these skills are actually, they transform into the operating habits that the best bosses have had that really are able to engage and sustain their team. So it is a habit. Brandon, when we think about this, why is this so important for team members when they're looking to their manager? We understand, hey, it's important to have trust, but why is integrity such an important guiding skill for a manager to have from a team member's perspective?
When we look at, I'm going to give you 4 key points today of what we want from the person who leads us. And these are pretty standard, I think, in most people's understanding of a boss to a team member's relationship, to a reporting relationship. We want someone who, number one, is going to keep their word. Keep your promise. If you say you're going to follow through, if you say you're going to do a thing, then do a thing, or make sure you tell us you didn't do the thing. But follow through. That is really important in both of our coaching experiences. When someone says the words, my boss lies or is a liar, there comes with that just a disconnect. I cannot lean on you. I cannot believe in you. I cannot trust you because I don't know that you're good for your word. So keeping your word, and I think we both know that is, when you think of the quintessential necessary component for a successful relationship with any leader to subordinate. If we don't start with that trust around the person who keeps their word, we're going to have some serious challenges.
Yeah, it's so true. And trust also lies in for the leader. One of the things we unpacked last week, this is a need that followers have, and we'll talk about that a little bit more this week again. In trust, it's this need that people have. And what happens here? It builds predictability, right? That's part of what we're going through. One of the things we addressed last week was just how we don't want to have a leader that's highly unpredictable. We don't want that in certain times, right? When things are going really well. And we definitely don't want that when we're in crisis mode, whatever the crisis is that you're working through in your business or is taking place. Now, as always, with these particular skills, each of these has a high level to them, an area we're not showing up strong. We encourage you, as you're listening and going through these and hearing of some key words with them, to look at where do you think that you actually lie on this particular scale, right? So this is a chance for you to do a little bit of an evaluation on yourself. We might hear the word integrity, as Brandon said, and we might think, oh, I got that. I checked the box. And we might not realize that unintentionally, some of our actions could be undermining integrity. And we think that we're doing everything in the manner that's leading to integrity. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we're going on. Brandon, can you showcase a little bit about these highs and these lows that take place with integrity, or even some key descriptive words?
Yeah, and this is a good time for us to mention that the manager intelligence assessment is something that really helps you as a leader understand how you rank on each one of these. And so this is called a Likert scale, where 5 is where you strongly agree, 4 agree, 3 you're neutral, 2 you disagree, 1 you strongly disagree. So with each one of these, you're going to think about them as 5 is mastery, 1 is novice or new, or not good. It needs improvement, significant improvement. And so that range is just a healthy, you are here, drop the pin, and it's a place to grow from. So when we think about a high level of integrity, of course, you're keeping your word. Next, you're keeping your calendar. This is one that gets many of us, because I might set an appointment with Darren and have every intention of being there to have my weekly or biweekly or monthly regular interval. But if I regularly have to reschedule on a person, or I don't show up on time, or I'm not demonstrating value, that one can really speak to integrity. So high level, keeping your calendar. We like to say that keeping your cool is a big part of integrity. When you're under pressure, maintaining composure is an aspect of this. And then learning how to say no. This is one that some of us who are very achievement-oriented struggle with, because we want to say yes. We want to get it done. We think we can do it all. And there are times where we can overcommit teams. So that's high level. That's keeping our word, keeping our calendar, keeping our cool, being firm with our commitments, yeses and nos, and knowing how to shield big time. Now, the low end, this is where obviously I mentioned dishonesty. Manipulation comes to mind for people. I can go behind people's back to try to get my way. This is where I don't hold myself to the same level of accountability that I hold you to. So it's okay for me to cancel the meeting, Darren, but don't you dare cancel on me, or I'm going to call you out for that. Right. That's a low level integrity, and room really to grow, because if that's where you're starting or you're somewhere in the middle, this is a skill that we really encourage you to think about how you can grow by being very intentional to develop it.
So important when we think about some of these pieces here, right? So again, keeping our word, those promises, keeping our calendar, that's staying on point with those appointments that we have and keeping our cool. And sometimes that just involves taking a breath in between things, or if we're knowing that we're going to step into a response that might be charged and might not give the right response to who we're working with our team members, maybe we take a pause there. No, right? Brandon, that's one of the most challenging things for many of us to do. I know you and I have struggled with that over the years collectively, and then we are supercharged when we're together, supercharging our leadership. We've had to look in the mirror at some times with our team and just say, okay, we're responsible for having fried you, and then wondering why you're feeling fried. And then we're like, oh, I did that. And that's the piece though, folks. So even if you're going through this, some of these key words that Brandon mentioned, accountability, trust, honesty, straightforward, it's really interesting. Accountability, Brandon mentioned being achievement oriented. Sometimes we can be so accountable that we can end up taking away others' accountability because unintentionally, our sense of accountability, I've taken psychological ownership of this whole project. You hand it off to a team member. The team member is working to get this piece of their project done by next Friday. Well, what do? You have a piece open in your calendar on Wednesday, you end up knocking it out. And then that team member said, well, why'd you do the work for me? Well, I know you had a lot on your plate. From our lens as leaders, I'm speaking from experience because I had to work through. I didn't realize what I thought to be were good actions, helping others, were actually hurting by communicating to them, I don't trust that you'll get this done by Friday, so I just jumped in on Wednesday and did it. From my heart, I was trying to be accountable and help the project jumping in. However, we need to be mindful of what that can communicate, and Absolutely. It can actually be the complete counter. Would you agree with that, Brandon?
Absolutely. Micromanagement would be a low level of integrity because it's essentially saying, I don't trust you. You don't have what it takes. And that would not be me operating integrous with how I say I value you or how I say I need you and rely upon you and empower you to do what you do best. I'm reminded as we're talking about do as I say, not as I do. For those of us who are parents, especially with teenagers, this is tough because there is a place where we want to establish age-appropriate rules and things that we want our kids to abide by. But then there's the non-age appropriate stuff, right? Then there's just us wanting to be able to act as I might prefer to act and not watch it on two legs do the same thing right behind me. And that carries over into management. Holding a standard that we all agree to and following those principles. And that's an area that some of us can really grow in because modeling effective leadership does involve, I must be accountable for the same thing I ask you to be accountable for. And recognize that if I take privilege, if I take exception, then I am sending a message that doesn't build on this skill of integrity because it will erode trust.
So important. And that brings us in. We're trying to recommend a book that has been really, really impactful for leaders, for those developing as emerging leaders, or maybe you're going through becoming a manager or are a manager right now. And one of the books that has been really profound for us is a book called Strengths-Based Leadership by Tom Rath and Barry Conchie. We talked about the 4 needs of followers last time, mentioned them earlier today: trust, compassion, stability, and hope. And that's actually directly out of strengths-based leadership, right? It's a book that tells us why is it that people follow, and it's tied to these 4 needs. Brandon, tell us a little bit more about strengths-based leadership as a book and the impact it's had.
Absolutely. So a study was done to determine what are the primary reasons why we follow the leaders in our life. And those are the top 4 that came through. And I don't think trust surprised anyone that is going to top most people's list. But these 4 needs are connected to an approach of leadership that focuses on people's strengths and how to develop them and how to use that philosophy of focusing more on what's right with people instead of what's wrong with them in coordination with these needs and understanding how we meet them. And the reality that, going back to individualized, different people are going to have these needs met in different ways. And so that, I feel this book is a great resource for leaders. We really enjoy a lot of Tom Rath's work, and I think he's done a really good job with this one. It was an earlier work of his that gives leaders something to platform from and build from. And plus, the second half of it, I think, is a great reference for some of us, good reference library type book.
Very, very much so. And that's the beauty of it is, again, the reference piece of it. It looks like a thicker book when you see it on first pass. It looks like it's a lot thicker than it actually is to read the content. But the reference material in there is incredibly powerful. So check that out if you haven't added it to your arsenal yet of going through. There's a great quote, Brandon, from Brian Tracy, right? So integrity is the most valuable and respected quality of leadership. Always keep your word. That's directly from Brian Tracy. It's so important for us to understand that and why integrity is not just something that you either have or you don't have, but understand it as it's a skill that the best bosses on the planet that have created teams that have been able to engage and sustain that over the course of time understand this piece. And before you're going to share a little bit about that quote, and we're going to give you some questions, some different exercises that you can actually do to take away and kind of think about some of these pieces so you can start developing that skill of integrity. Brandon, tell us a little bit about this quote.
Sure. Brian is a leadership expert and a fantastic communicator. If you've not heard Brian speak, I encourage you to partake in some of what he has out. But this quote, I think for many of us, this is well understood, that we respect leaders who are respectable, and integrity is often tied to being a respectable person because you're good for it. You're going to follow through. You're a go-to human that we can rely upon. And it's what we want in leaders. We want to know that you're good for that, because I think what Brian catches on to is the social contract. If you're going to be the leader and you're going to be afforded certain benefits and privileges because you're the leader, you'll probably make more money. You'll probably have some advantages in the career, in the office, larger space, nice window, nice view, perks that come with being a leader. Then we want you to be good for it. We want you to follow through. And so I think Brian's comment here is absolutely accurate. Most valued and most respected quality.
It's so important for us to think about this, again, as a skill. And we want to leave you, there's a couple of just questions we can ask of ourselves that can help to identify where do we lie in this realm of integrity. And it's a chance for us to connect on one of the qualities that all of the best leaders have. That single quality that all the best leaders share is what, Brandon?
Self-awareness.
Self-awareness. They know who they are and who they're not. These questions can help broaden our self-awareness as we're leading, as we're going through, as we're managing, and really developing our own manager intelligence acumen, our manager quotient, if you will, right? That's a way to kind of think about it. So I'm going to give you a couple questions here. So number one is, how often do you set and keep your appointments? Are you reliable with your calendar as often as possible? This is important, and this is two-tier. This is not only to your appointments that you're keeping with others. Are you keeping the appointments that matter to you? Because integrity goes two ways, but it starts with ourselves, right? I've been watching Brandon just evolve over the course of the past several months. He has been committed to a health plan, and he's been keeping himself accountable by doing what, Brandon? What's the number one driver? Where's it got to go first to make sure that that time is protected for you?
Yeah, it's got to change my habits, got to sleep well, got to be focused on things that be done right order.
And it ends up on your calendar. I've been loving watching.
Not on there, it doesn't exist.
Yeah, exactly. And for Brandon, it started in just really leveling up how he's wanting to show up on a health basis, and he's committing that time. And with all that we're working through in our company, Brandon's in the process of writing another book right now, another series of books with his wife right now on the incredible kids and incredible parents coming up. There's been a lot to manage, but putting that on the calendar, that integrity starts with how are we treating ourselves, right? That's right. Part of it. I want you to not only look outward as to how it's going for others, but also look at how are you keeping those calendar appointments with yourself and those important to you. It's a practice. If we realize that maybe we're not showing up as strong in those places, how can you first develop that in yourself to keep those commitments to yourself? And then we can build a habit. Remember, these skills are effectively the habits of the best bosses. The other question that we'll leave you with, are you skilled at saying no more than you say yes, right? How often do you end up just jumping in and say, yes, I can do that, right? Brandon, you and I have struggled with that over the years. And here's a powerful pivot in our question that we can ask. Because for many of you that are achievement-oriented, you have gotten to where you're at by doing what? By saying yes. And what has gotten you here won't get you there to that next level. So can you say yes to saying no? Because when you say yes to a bunch of things, you're actually saying no to far more others than you even realize. So how can we develop the mindset of saying yes to saying no to free ourselves and looking at through the lens of what creates the greatest return on time invested, not only for us as a manager, but for our teams, that allows them to show up strong, and that way we can lead strong in any season that we're in. So any final points on those, Brandon, as we're getting close to wrapping up today?
No, but I really like that. I think the reality is that when we have committed to things, necessarily we've said no, and it works both ways. And I think it's a powerful point for integrity, because how we use our most precious and valuable resources, our resource, which is, in my opinion, the great equalizer, time. How we leverage time says a lot about our integrity, and leaders who level up in that understanding realize it is a daily commodity that I have so much of. I ought to spend wisely, and that is a real key to growing your integrity.
And that plays in, on that point, that sparks something. That plays into the fact in the season that we're in 2020 right now, talking about Zoom fatigue, we're talking about electronic fatigue. I got one of those, I don't know if you've seen those, Brandon, one of those electronic necklaces, one of those EMF metal ones that help to protect you from the amount of electrical energy that we're taking in. It works as a little bit of a shield because we're spending so much time there. The other piece that we have to realize, though, is as managers, we face decision-making fatigue. So if we're not taking that time to invest in our people, invest in ourselves through the lens of trust, guess what starts to happen? Our capacity for making the good, big decisions, because we've said yes to far too many things, it wanes. So yeah, we're making more decisions, but the quantity of them is higher. The quality starts to diminish, and that's not a place that we really want to be in. So on that note, thank you so much for tuning in to the Manager Intelligence Podcast. Be sure to check out our previous episodes as well, and you can learn about the skill of individualize and even a little bit more about what manager intelligence is and more about the 4 needs of followers. Next week, in episode 6, we're going to be jumping into the manager intelligence skill of influence for you to develop. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll catch you next time. Take care. If you want to continue your growth in Leading Strong by hanging out with others committed to leading strong, join one of our LinkedIn or Facebook groups by looking for the Leading Strong Show. The truth is, organizational results like productivity, profitability, and low employee turnover rise and fall based on employee engagement. The world is starving for strong leaders, as they not only impact an organization's performance, they create massive influence on an employee's overall health and well-being. If you want to learn more about becoming a great place to work, or 34 Strong's signature Leading Strong programs, simply go to 34strong.com, where you will also be able to access resources you can start using immediately and stay connected with us. I want to thank you for sharing this episode with everyone you know who will benefit. Be sure to subscribe through your favorite podcasting channels, and please leave us a review. A big shout out to Wendell Fishman for writing and arranging the tune Aunt Lion for Leading Strong. Remember, everyone deserves a great place to work, and any workplace can be great. You can create culture by intention and design, and change happens with every life you touch. I am Darren Verasamy, here to help you lead strong. Until next time, my friends, I'm out.